All right, South Africa's agricultural exports from citrus to wine, all of those face uncertainty as AGOA, the deal with the United States, nears expiration at the end of this month. Now, this agreement has provided duty-free access to the United States' market, supporting thousands of farming jobs and billions in exports. With its renewal in doubt, the sector could face major challenges. Let's speak to Agri SA CEO Johann Kotzé for insights on what this means for the economy as well as South Africans. Johann, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Second quarter numbers on the agriculture side, especially exports to the United States, showed a 26% increase. This is despite all the fear, concerns, the riffraff, the tariffs, etc. Do we really still need this preferential access? Because it looks like our market might be a little bit more resilient and people still want our agri-processing and stuff.
Remember, we still exported those numbers under the current deal that we have. So it's literally a boermarket plan. So if we knew that it's going to expire, so we've pushed as much as we could, specifically the citrus guys, into the market still under the deal that we have. So that's the first one. The second one is, do we need it? Yes, we do. I think there's not a more pure mechanism to stimulate development in agriculture than a trade deal than what we had with AGOA. It's from the buyer back to the farmer into the rural community where development takes place. So I think it's a mechanism that really stimulated rural development and agricultural development in South Africa. And it would be a pity for us if we do lose the deal that we had with them.
Yeah, some would say then, or maybe we could ask the question, I mean, pivoting to more, shall we say, diversified trade agreements with emerging markets, that might be possible, but it's the difficulty of having to replace a market that takes up double digits worth of exports or worth of South African exports every single month. And doing that in one go is very difficult.
Yeah, remember, we're also seasonal, so that helps us a bit. The only guys that were really heavily affected immediately were the citrus guys. We're starting with grapes at the end of say mid-November. I would say the ostrich guys were also a bit in the dark with how to deal with this matter, and they were also started to kind of push their market. I think we need to put something in context with this. As agriculture, we're going to survive as South Africa, but it has a major impact on certain industries in agriculture, which is the difficulty we need to deal with. You don't find a market, specifically in agriculture, in a blink of an eye, and then you kind of just push into a different market. It's a difficult place to be when you are sitting with perishables, because you are in need to push and to put it into a market. What I need to say about the deal itself, we were in America beginning of the year, just when we kind of had this idea that AGOA is not going to go through. And none of the Americans, Republicans, Democrats, the White House, none of them were anti-AGOA. So we're still hopeful that maybe not an AGOA deal, but a different trade deal would emerge out of this. So there's still a hope for us as South Africans. The other thing what we also need to put in context is when you do an increase in a tariff, it is shown even by the Trump administration themselves that increase actually kind of pushed into the market or the country that raised the tariff. And we're seeing that. So the outcome for us might be difficult, but there's also a lot of good that came out of this. And I think one thing is, I said to you, a boermarket plan, we need to kind of look into our whole basket and say, how does the trade situation in South Africa look like? And how do we need to deal with that trade, the new trade rules that is set all over the world? So there's negativity, but there's also a lot of positivity regarding this matter. When we were in America, one thing that came to mind many a times, and it's if we don't see ourselves in a position like that, is the role play of agriculture in Africa for Europe, China, and America. And the main thing about that is the social economic stability that it brings. It opens up a market for other goods and produce to flow in. So agriculture development is a major, I would say, burning point even for the Americans. And hopefully we can have a different way of maybe just getting a deal differently as what we had.
Yeah, Johann, are you finding, and I was speaking to somebody about this similar situation and how South Africa is in the crosshairs of the United States in many aspects, including AGOA being a key part of that, but that deal making was still happening. And particularly when it comes to things like G20 or B20 on the sidelines of the G20, where New York, which is the businesses, the entities, all of those markets are still willing to do business with South Africa. It's Washington, where all the bureaucracy is happening, that's where the difficulty is. Are you finding that that might be similar in a case like this, where we could still have a relationship stateside, it would just not necessarily be on a government-to-government level?
I think that, I said it before, that we should not allow the Trump administration to go into our heads. What I meant by that is sometimes you're small, you feel insignificant, and you don't see your role play. And if you go out of that space and you open your mind and you understand a bit about what's going on in the world, and then you see through the woods, you actually see that people do want to trade with us. So one of the things that we said as agriculture, two things about agriculture into America is keep open up our market. Keep the market open, irrespective of the tariff, because we have a market. And you can always negotiate a market that you have. If you don't have a market, you're going to find it very difficult. And we still see that market open. We still see that there's a great need for that market. Remember, the tariff came like immediately. It came in. You know, it can also leave. We can also halve that. We don't know. But at least we have a market that's open. The second thing is the SPS, the phytosanitary controls and the measures that we have. We ask and we plead as agriculture, don't let go of that, because you need to protect the little market that we have compared to the American market, specifically on agriculture. So yes, if you look through all the issues and all the stress that we go through, there is a market. There are people willing to pay for produce in South Africa, specifically from South Africa. And what gives me the greatest joy is that we can compete in that market, even though with a 30% tariff, which is tough, but we have fantastic goods. We have quality goods, quantities that we can push into that market, and there's a great need for that.
Do you know how many jobs could be lost, however, because of these tariffs or because of the loss of AGOA?
Yeah, listen, agriculture-wise, we always talk about job losses in agriculture until it happens, and it goes through, and then we made a plan, and something came through. I can tell you, I think the job losses that we looked into, we went even into provinces. And we said to ourselves, which provinces are going to be the most affected? I think the most affected one is the Western Cape, due to the citrus that exports to America. And then the interesting one is Limpopo with the macadamias. 30% of the macadamias, it goes through the American market. So a possibility of a loss. But I think the highest intensity of loss goes through a little place like Oudtshoorn. And that's our concern. We sometimes overlook and we just look at the numbers, but we don't understand even 1,500 jobs being lost in Oudtshoorn would be devastating for the little economy in Oudtshoorn. And that we looked into to go and have a look and see what the real impact would be in the South African agricultural market.
Yeah, I believe just earlier this year, and I forget the country exactly, but I know the agriculture minister, John Steenhuisen, was able to open up another Asian market. I'm not sure if it's Indonesia or Taiwan. I'm actually a little bit lost when it comes to the exact location. But it's the opening up of a different market, or a market we hadn't been to in quite some time, because Apple started going there as well on our end. In the meantime, while this has all happened, are there other avenues that we've been able to open up, whether it be in the Middle East, Asia, and BRICS areas?
Yeah, Billy, you know what? When we were in America, one of the guys made a comment and said, you guys think you're special. You're just standing in the queue. There are plenty of countries not negotiating and couldn't negotiate a deal with us. And also with tariffs. So what happened in the world market is it's actually disturbed. And being disturbed in the world market created some opportunities. But again, if you have the Trump administration in your see that opportunities. So there are new opportunities opening up, but it is a process to go into it. So I think the first is we talk about, or many times we spoke about market diversification. It's fantastic, but it takes time to do it. I think one thing that we've learned is even in the existing markets that we have, there's a ripple effect going on. So Chile is not exporting all their say citrus to the EU, but it's sending it to America due to the better tariffs than what we have. So there's an opening for us to push into that market. Luckily, agriculture is seasonal, so it's not that everybody can push into a market now. You need to be in the season, you need to be with the right quantity and quality going into that market. So there are new opportunities opening up, but there's also existing opportunities that didn't exist in the past with trade partners due to this unsettlement of what the tariffs did to the world, the trade of world, the wall of trade.
Yeah. Johann, I'm going to put your head on the block here. You said a boer maak 'n plan. So what's the plan here? Wat kan ons nou doen? Are we going to get a plan in future?
Yeah, I think one thing is we need to work together as agriculture on an export strategy. Remember, we didn't export 30 years ago, and all of a sudden we doubled our total output, and we export 50% of what we produce. So it's actually we export 100% of what we did 30 years ago, which is amazing. So we need to focus on standing together. And I think the last thing we can do now is differ in the way that we approach this new export environment that we go into. And I think the next thing is, from a farming side, is to keep the farmers positive. You know, some of the farmers not even exporting to America are negative of what's happening in America. And the moment that happens is we kind of lose focus on what we're good in. And that is to produce good food and good products out of South Africa and push it into the world, to the world market. So maybe a different bit of a stance on that. If I may, on a governmental side, is working together of departments, finding a kind of a concept where departments could work together and face these issues in a quicker way. I think it also taught us that you can't wait 6 months to deal with something. You need to have a relationship, and if something happens, you need to be quick, with a quick reaction and a quick push into a space. So positive. There is some negativities, and some farmers are burning. It's not easy, but you're not going to push us down. The hope in our hearts as farmers to produce goods for South Africa and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
That's even burning harder than we had in the past. That passion is just unstoppable.